Okay. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this is your facilitator, Ikechukwu Ezeodoji, commonly known as Ike. I am speaking from the University of Zululand in South Africa. You are cordially welcome to this webinar being hosted by SUCSESS Project. SUCSESS Project is co-founded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. At this stage, it's expedient to let you know what this project is all about. Now you see my slides? Can somebody unmute the microphone and confirm you're seeing my slide?
Not yet, Prof.
Not yet, okay. Okay, I will share it. You seen it now?
Coming up, thank you.
Beautiful, okay. SUCSESS Project has its aim to actually strengthen the cooperation between higher education institutes in South Africa and of course, enterprises in South Africa. When we talk about enterprises, we're talking about businesses in South Africa, the industry itself. It has actually its roots in identifying the needs to support the employability of graduates, especially from tourism and business backgrounds by creating new learning methods. It endeavors to strengthen the capacity of South African University to cooperate with enterprises. By so doing, our regional and economic development will be enhanced. It's a 3-year project, which is a collaboration of 6 universities in South Africa, Finland, and the UK. The partner universities are 1, Hega-Halia University of Applied Sciences in Finland that takes care of project coordination. Oulu University in Finland is also one of us. Sheffield Hallam University, situated in UK, is also one of our partners. In South Africa, we have University of Johannesburg, University of Pretoria, and where I am currently sitting in, University of Zululand. Please follow us on our webpage, which we shall also again show to you, www.successproject.co.za, and our Facebook page you can see on the screen, SUCSESS Project, and our Twitter handle is @SUCSESSProject. Ladies and gentlemen, before we commence our discussion, I would like to make you aware of some particular rules, but before I make you aware of these rules, let me introduce your panelists to you. Starting from my left here, Mr. Shifiwa Shivengwa, who is the CEO of TBCSA, Tourism Business Council in South Africa. The second person is Mr. Jerry Mabena, who is the CEO of Tebe Investment, also in South Africa. And the third person is Professor Berendin Lube, who is a research professor at the University of Pretoria. And then we have Mr. Jarmo Ritalahti of Hega-Halia University of Applied Sciences in Finland also joining us. And last but not the least, we have my good friend, Ms. Tracy Daniels from the School of Tourism and Hospitality from the University of Johannesburg. Before we commence our discussion again, as I rightly said, I will make you aware of some basic house rules. All participants are advised to mute their microphone throughout the presentations. By so doing, no background noise will disturb the speakers. During the question and answer sessions, please, you may unmute yourself and ask your question if need be. I need to also make you aware that this webinar is being recorded for the benefit of those who wanted to join us, but circumstances prevented them from joining us. Please also feel free to write your questions in the chat panel while the panelists are presenting. We will have access to your questions and we will endeavor to answer as many of them as possible during the main presentations. To the panelists, I have to remind you that Professor Berendin Lube will be presenting our research findings and she will be allocated 15 minutes for her presentation. After she has presented, I will ask other panelists to have only 5 minutes to speak. I may give you a grace of 1 minute, after which I will gently remind you that you have exhausted the allocated time. Therefore, you've gone beyond your time period and I will stop you from speaking, unfortunately. We shall now kickstart our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, by inviting Professor Berendin Lube to make her presentation of the gap analysis we conducted at the initial phase of the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me just get to my presentation. Right. Thank you very much, Ike. Good afternoon to all. So for the research phase of the project, we had two objectives. First, we had to determine if universities were adequately preparing students for a career. In other words, what competencies and skills they needed to make them employable. And we looked at the role of the lecturers and the teaching environment in this regard. Secondly, we wanted to find out how important industry collaboration is in readying students to enter the work environment and to be able to adapt to the job very quickly. Our data was collected from three sources: students, lecturers, and industry and government representatives. And we did this in three countries: the UK, South Africa, and Finland. The UK and Finland were included in the study for the purposes of benchmarking, and we wanted to try and identify some best case practices which we could transfer to South Africa. But the key findings that I'm going to be presenting here this afternoon will focus on South Africa. Through our online survey of students, we got 509 respondents across the three countries, most being from South Africa, or the majority being from South Africa. And this covered students from both traditional universities and the universities of technology. We did 44 interviews with lecturers.
Professor Berendine, we cannot see your presentation. Please, can you share your presentation with us?
Okay, sorry about that.
The screen. Use the share screen, the green one button on the lower. Exactly. Thank you so much. You started. Yeah.
Now?
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yes, we are seeing it now. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to repeat the objectives. That was clear to everybody, and I think this is just the basic data collection phase. We obtained a lot of valuable data through these through this project, but obviously due to our constraints in time this afternoon, I won't be able to provide you with all of it. So I'm going to be focusing on some of the main key findings. If we sometimes wonder why universities chase after ranking so energetically, this research once again shows that the reputation of the university is clearly important. The majority of students believe that the university is significant in job seeking. Industry is more inclined to collaborate with universities based on their reputation and their relevant expertise. And lecturers also have more confidence in building relationships with industry because of the reputable nature of the university. We found that, sorry. No, okay, sorry about that now. We found that the lecturers play a very important role in career preparation, although significantly more South African students felt this way than those in Finland, interestingly enough. The competencies where most of the South African students, as a matter of fact, more than 90% of the students agreed, was that their lecturers had contributed the most to their ability to take responsibility for tasks, to take initiative, and to meet deadlines. However, when we look at the whole question of whether students are ready to enter the workplace, we found that there is a significant difference between South African students and their counterparts in Finland and the UK. A higher percentage of South African students have a very low expectation of finding their ideal job, they're uncertain of what the workplace expects of them, and they're also far more afraid to start looking for a job. We looked at what industry regards as most important in the workplace, and this they already start looking for at the job interview stage. And almost without exception, respondents said that it's the right attitude. Industry looks for things like students' willingness to learn or graduates' willingness to learn with an open-minded approach, whether they are prepared to do different things, their reliability, and also a measure of confidence. If we look at some of the more specific skills and competencies, that's apart from your technical and job-specific skills, industry looks for, well, the most important one that they have mentioned was communication, both verbal and oral communication. So that's a very important skill that students need. They need problem-solving skills. Teamwork is important, and also technological skills are very important in the opinion of industry and lecturers. Industry is generally satisfied with the performance of universities in preparing students for work, but they did highlight some gaps that need to be addressed. They said that more needs to be done to enhance students' entrepreneurial and technological skills, which they view as particularly important in career preparation and job seeking, especially now in this time of the consequences of the pandemic measures. They also said that they found that students were uncertain as to what the workplace actually entailed. And lecturers in industry both agreed that a practical exposure of students to the workplace in some, or to the job environment and what it expects of them, is extremely important because it increases student employability and work readiness. So really you get two types of, if we can call it collaboration or practical exposure rather. The one is where industry is involved with the program in the form of industry collaboration with the universities. And the other is where we find programs that are built into the curriculum and relate more to your case studies, project work, etc., or even things like students starting entrepreneurial ventures within the university environment. That's where industry is not directly involved. So if we look at some of the examples, and the interesting thing about this is that what we found is that a significantly higher percentage of students from Finland are involved in projects which are directly linked to industry and where industry is involved in these projects. Things like where industry funds innovative development work, internships and work integrated learning programs, and research developmental programs about industry issues, but where industry is involved in partnership with industry. South African students tended to be more involved in research development projects about industry issues, but not necessarily where industry is directly involved. Things like student-run enterprises and other entrepreneurial programs that is built into their curriculum. So, unfortunately, on the collaboration side in South Africa, we did find that on average, across the various forms of collaboration, only about 20% of students surveyed have actually been involved in collaboration activities. Some activities are as low as 5%, even lower. Others did not exceed 30%, but on average, it was about 20%. Collaboration definitely benefits students in terms of work readiness and employability, because they have a greater chance of being employed if they have been involved in some form of collaboration with industry. They also learn an appreciation and respect for diversity. They learn more about themselves and what they want. Their minds are open to more career paths. This was quite an important one. And obviously there is an improvement in work skills. For industry, there's also some benefits. The organization has the opportunity of doing some talent spotting. Students bring a youthful energy to the organization and lots of innovation, and it also creates a more positive image for the organization. Of course, the low collaboration in South Africa can be ascribed to a number of challenges that were identified. The most important appears to be the high student numbers with which lecturers must contend, and the lack of capacity for industry to accommodate so many students in these types of collaboration programs. Also, students often lack the resources to effectively participate in some of these, even internships, because they do not get sufficiently supported in this by both industry and the university. Of course, even though the study was started before the pandemic hit us, we could not ignore the consequences in terms of employability of students and collaboration activities. So this was on top of everybody's mind because into the research, it became quite a serious matter. So there are obviously challenges which need to be recognized by students, by industry, by lecturers. And industry was very agreed more or less on the things that students need to do. They said they need to try and build networks even before graduation in some or other way. And this can be more informal or formal type of exposure to industry. They need to look to technology as having an increasingly important role in the work environment, and they need to focus on being resourceful and on entrepreneurial activities. So entrepreneurship is an extremely important thing in this time of COVID. So finally, just to wrap up, we were able to make some key recommendations in relation to the teaching environment and ideas for collaboration to overcome the challenges that are currently being experienced. So as far as teaching goes, the teaching environment, it's essential that the curriculum must be aligned with industry expectations. One of the things when we asked industry what they would do to improve the teaching was to say that often teaching is done without due concern about what's happening in industry. So that's quite an important alignment that has to happen. Students are often also not made aware of the relevance of their studies to industry, and not only of their studies, but also of the competencies that they are learning. And they even forget to put some of this stuff on their CVs, and which could add a whole lot to their employability. Of course, they said that entrepreneurial skills are extremely important, and we recommend that this be included in all disciplines, both hard sciences, soft sciences, the humanities, and the business sciences. And given the climate that we're in at the moment, business ethics did come up, and that needs to be something that has to be included in all types of disciplines. As far as collaboration goes, then also much more emphasis on technological awareness and capabilities. I mentioned that, sorry, I just got a bit confused there. As far as collaboration goes, we need to look towards technology to form the basis for virtual collaboration as a substitute to what we will now have mainly physical or on-site programs. Student involvement in collaboration activities should be credit-bearing and compulsory at universities. Lecturers should be incentivized to include collaboration in their teaching portfolio, and industry needs to recognize the importance of the collaboration, and that it is a two-way process. So, okay, that was a quick, a very brief overview of some of the key findings, and I sincerely hope that it's given a bit of thought or food for thought for further debate this afternoon, and I'm happy to take any questions at question time. Thank you very much, Ike. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Berendine, for that beautiful presentation, and thank you also for sharing your screen. Our colleagues, panelists, participants, the key objective of this project is to kind of ensure industry and the HEI. When I say HEI, I mean higher education institutions collaboration within our industry, talking about tourism, hospitality, and the business discipline. Now, the findings show that there's a low involvement of industry collaboration in South Africa with the higher education institutions. May I call now on Ms. Tracy, Ms. Tracy, to actually unpack why does she think, because she's also an academic like myself in South Africa, why does she think that this is lower in South Africa compared to Finland? After which I may have to call on Jarmo to actually tell us the Finnish experience, and then I'll call our industry stakeholders. Thank you so much. Tracy, can we hear your voice?
Hi there, thank you for having me today. Can you hear me?
We're hearing you.
Can you hear me, Ike?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi there, thank you very much for having me with you today. As the research that's been presented by Prof. Libbe has shown, collaboration with industry is quite low, particularly in comparison to the Finnish. And if we look at the history of industry collaboration, this was most commonly taking place in the form of internships. But the problem with these internships is that students are only taken for a short period of time. And during this time, they're often given quite menial tasks. And, you know, we don't want to admit it, but often viewed as cheap labor. And this is then very seldom converted into full-time employment. And we haven't seen that industry has truly capitalized on the benefits of collaboration. And these benefits can be creating a pipeline of future employees, contributing to a broad-based BEE codes and skills development. It can form part of their CSR initiatives. And the research shows us that service businesses can really benefit from the professional development of students. So as higher education institutions need to think about what we can do to address this gap and then increase collaboration. And what we're looking at the moment is developing a comprehensive database of industry partners who are willing to collaborate with us. We would like these collaboration opportunities for students to begin from as early as their first year of study and not be isolated to modules of work integrated learning or of internships. So if we build industry collaboration into the curriculum from as early as first year, this will enable students to think more about their career development. It'll provide them with career guidance and management, and also help them to develop more practical and interpersonal skills. It could also allow for them to have placement periods within this industry throughout their, the duration of their studies, which allows for our industry partners to groom future staff. If we work together with our industry partners, we can also continuously review our curriculum to make sure that we keep it relevant and make sure that we are providing students with the skills and the competencies that match what the industry wants and what they require. So we're currently looking at various modes of delivery to increase the levels of collaboration between higher education institutions and our industry partners. And there are various ways that we can do this. We can do this through guest lectures, through industry members stepping into our classrooms and providing our students with real-life case studies and examples, through field trips, and where this is not possible, we've mentioned through the use of technology, such as virtual experiences. And what the fantastic thing is about the SUCSESS project is that the funding that is going to be made available to us through the EU will enable us to close this gap between industry and higher education institutions. We are also then able to learn valuable lessons from our Finnish partners. And although the context is quite different, the ideas around entrepreneurship are the same. So when we're looking at what changes we can make from the perspective of the university, there are also changes that we need to make in terms of how we train and how we teach our students. And the focus needs to change from our students no longer being just good workers, but being excellent innovators, and from grooming workers to grooming entrepreneurs. We also need to consider meeting the needs of a new generation of learners. So our content must be relevant, and it must speak to the particular context of the students. There's also a demand from students to develop a good rapport between students and their peers and our industry partners from as early as their first year of study. And again, as Prof. Libber mentioned, we cannot stress enough the importance of the use of technology in terms of exposing students to industry and increasing collaboration. Ultimately, we would like the relationship between the university and industry to be mutually beneficial in order to provide our students with the highest of quality of education and also to afford industry the benefits of collaborating with us. Thank you, Ike.
Ike, your microphone is muted.
Thank you so much again. Thank you again, Yarmo, for reminding me. Thank you so much again, Tracy, for that wonderful elaboration. It means, therefore, we still have quite a lot to do in South Africa. We are not trying to really, well, we know we are the gaps that we need to fill, and that is why this project. And we have 3 years to actually kind of unpack all these issues, kind of strategize, and then move forward. May I therefore call on Yarmo from Hagahalia University of Applied Sciences in Finland to actually tell us the secret. Why does he think that Finland seems to have better, or say more industry collaboration with HEIs? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ike. Hi, my name is Jarmo Ritalahti. I'm Principal Lecturer of Tourism and Head of Master Degree Program in Aviation and Tourist Business at Hagahelia. In a way, the last question, or the question I kind of asked, it's very easy to reply and answer. There is a lot of kind of described already in the legislation. So the legislation of universities of applied sciences state clearly that every curriculum or every curricula must include 30 credits or 20 weeks of internship, and without that the students can't get their degree. And then when this is applied to the bachelor programs. And at the master level, so our master students must have at least 2 years of work experience before they can enter to the master program after their bachelor degree. So these are this is kind of framework we have to enhance the employability of students. And then I don't know if I should say this, but also the Ministry of Education and Culture who funds us. So we are also measured by the employability of the students. So part of our funding comes from that. So how big percentage of our graduates will start to work after the graduation, and what do they do after, I think, is it now 5 years and so on. So, and also this criteria will change. So it's not only about employment, it's also turning to kind of qualitative criteria. So do the student work after their graduation in the same field they have studied? And what kind of work they are doing? Are they doing, for example, are they doing in a way more kind of customer service work, or are they already working at the expert level? So this is once again something that we must take into account when planning our curricula, and also the pedagogy. So how do we implement the teaching? And here I would like to give you an example of inquiry learning or inquiry-based learning we implement on Porvoo campus of Hagahelia. So we have done this about 10 years now. And inquiry learning, in this case, enhances those soft competencies or meta competencies the industry is looking for. Professor Lubbe already showed us a list of these competencies. So it's about communication, it's about networking, etc., etc. In a way, competencies that is rather challenging to teach in a traditional way. So these must be then kind of, the students should reach these through the way we work here on Porvoo campus. And inquiry-based learning on Porvoo campus means that students learn in semester projects. So students and student groups are commissioned by an organization outside the campus, and students work with this project or these projects throughout a semester. And we link the courses of that semester to the project so that students get information, knowledge, theory they need to finish the project and reach the aims of the project. Also, the role of the teachers has changed after introducing this pedagogical approach, inquiry learning. So teachers are also more learners than before. When every semester students are working with a different project, so teachers can't perhaps anymore rely on their kind of traditional knowledge, because the problem is always new also for the teachers. And then we also see the industry representatives or the commissioners as learners as well, because they are part of the project process as well. So they must be engaged to the cooperation. So this is kind of what we are doing on Porvoo campus. There are different interpretations of inquiry learning and different other pedagogical approaches. But then when I think about what are those pedagogical approaches that enhance employability, so I would perhaps give a name experiential learning where students are kind of creating together the knowledge and trying to solve a real life project. It can be consultancy work, it can be project-based learning, it can be, as I said, we have inquiry learning, sometimes also in problem-based learning, in a way the focus can be in a case, but very often on problem-based learning, so the case is more from a book or something, so it's not always a real life case. But in a way, students, when they learn, in a way they learn also in a way, how would I say, not only the meta competencies but business competencies when they work in various projects. So this is shortly what I wanted to say. So thank you, Aiken, and now I think it's then the industry representative of this panel who can go on.
Thank you so much, Sharmo. Please stay there, don't run away.
No, I promise to stay here.
Yeah, please, I know you're a good boy, just stay there. Okay, good. To our industry stakeholders, having heard from the key findings from our gap analysis and also hearing from both academics in South Africa and in Finland, I want to call on Mr. Jerry Mabena, the CEO of Tebe Investments, to actually share his thoughts. I mean, I know a lot is going on through his mind while all these presentations and discussions are taking place. Can you just let us know what has been going into your mind and the solutions thereof? Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry Mabena.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you to Perodin for a very enlightening document. I'm going to start by just going back to a point that Perodin mentioned about the characters of an employable student. I think the issues around the attitude, competencies, and I think when one looks at the students as a homogeneous group, it's a bit problematic in a South African context because the students come from very many different environments. And if you think about the notion of what we might refer to as attitude or a competence, like a confidence, for someone who grew up in a rural area coming into an urban environment, and you're expecting them to operate in a five-star environment, which is something that is completely foreign to them. And at times, it's even foreign to the lecturers who are trying to teach them. So the lecturer is trying to take the information straight out of a book and impart it onto the students. So therein, again, is another gap that we try to deal with. But I want to then say the thing that is really uppermost in my mind, and some of the questions that have come through from a number of the participants, I think the starting point is COVID-19 has taught us as a South African community. The big thing is we're relying too much on international travel. I think if there's one thing that we are learning out of this is our reliance on international travel. And when you talk about international travel, also you then begin to say, what does that mean for a student coming into the sector? If a student coming into the sector thinks that the Americans or the British or the Finns are not going to be coming in the next 18 months, why should I bother? But if we change that narrative and start talking about domestic tourism, which has actually begun to happen completely organically and independent of even industry itself pushing it, where people are now going out and having a lot of experiences and doing things that ordinarily they would not have done. And I'm now referring particularly to the so-called black market, if I can just use that term briefly. You are seeing them going out to actually participating in nature-based travel, nature-based experiences. But the big thing for me, Prof, is, which actually occupies my mind, is the change in the nature of travel, whether it's domestic or international, where most travelers are looking for experiences. I think they don't want to observe travel, they want to actually experience travel. So they want to immerse themselves in either cultures or in the music of the particular culture or whatever other thing that the country offers, whether it's food or whatever else that particular place offers. What that does for us as institutions of learning is that we then need to take a step back and begin to say, as industry and as academic institutions, how do we get together to be able to harness that experience? I think Yamo was actually referring to experiential learning. How do we begin to bring that experiential learning into the fold, and how do we begin to make it real and make it practical in these particular environments? So I think there's something that can be done there, where we're now moving the learning out of a typical classroom into the field. What is the role of the private sector in there? I think for me, to the extent that we're now changing the content of what needs to be done, we need to then, I like the idea that Tracy talks to, which is that we bring in the students on the learning program much earlier in the process. So they then get to actually experience the work environment a little bit sooner than ordinarily that they would, where they would be at third year level. So as the industry ourselves, I think we're sitting in a space where we don't need to look at students as just a market to employ, but it's also a market that consumes. So if we find them and actually start making that environment comfortable for them quicker, I think it will change the way we think about some of these things. I'm not sure if, Prof, I've answered your issue. I've written a whole lot of notes here, but I could go on for a long time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry. I want to tell our participants that Jerry is actually in Kruger National Park. So we actually envy him, and we can see he's enjoying himself and everything is fine around him. Jerry, please stay back there. Don't move. If you move, I'm going to have a personal problem with you. I want to call on Mr. Shifiwa Shivengwa, who is the CEO of TBCSA, to actually share also his lines of thoughts during these presentations and discussions. So Mr. Shifiwa Shivengwa, please, can you help us?
Thank you, Prof. And, it's great to see, everyone and, such high participation. This is a subject matter that's very close to my heart. Having graduated in University of Johannesburg, long time ago, before it was called University of Johannesburg, at the School of Tourism then. So it is a subject that's very close to my heart. I think one of the things that one has to acknowledge is that, indeed there is a gap you know, between, you know, having a degree or diploma in tourism or hospitality or any other related fields, you know, with the employment, you know, and I've seen this, you know, when I graduated, that majority of things that I learned in school were not applicable, you know, in real world situations. So there is work that needs to be done, as the analysis have shown, between, you know, classroom and, you know, the real work, you know, experience. However, you know, it does require that us as an industry, you know, we open up and we create more opportunities for, you know, young people, students to be able to come within the industry and to be able to, you know, contribute and learn and be able to gain some experience, you know, from the sector. Because, you know, without that experience, you know, we can't be going around as an industry and asking people to have certain amount of years of experience without opening up opportunities for the students to gain and to learn and to develop themselves and also to learn from others and be able to gain this experience. So there is work that needs to be done from our side as well to open up the industry. It is a reality that, you know, we have that problem. In terms of the comparative analysis with other countries, you know, of course, we do have, you know, different economic sort of construct. We here in South Africa have, if you have to look at the tourism industry in totality, it supports around 1.5 million jobs. And, you know, we have an economy that's not growing and not creating jobs. This simply means that, you know, our industry as a tourism industry is not spared. And therefore, you know, we do have a challenge of creating, you know, new jobs. Although I do think that, you know, there is a bit of space, you know, to be able to put in few people into the tourism system. So there is that challenge. There is an economic challenge, and the COVID-19 doesn't do us any favor, if I may get into that space, because what we have seen so far is that, you know, many young people that were employed are no longer employed. We have seen many people that have been working in the industry for many, many years, leaving the industry, you know, not on their own will, but because of the situation at hand. We know that, you know, the industry works in demand and supply. We do know that we're not moving, even from the tourism development point of view, are not moving as fast as we would want to move. So we do have that challenge, you know, from the economics point of view, that doesn't do us any favor, as well as the COVID point of view, that doesn't do us any favor. Although, you know, I do believe that we're going to recover. And I think that, you know, it may take 2 to 3 years, you know, to get back to the levels of 2019. If you look at the report that was put out by SUCSESS, I think it was in 2018, it did talk about the fact that, you know, tourism as a sector was the only one that was creating more jobs than many other sectors. So many sectors losing the jobs, you know, we have managed to add up, you know, some few jobs, you know, over the past, you know, few years. Now, there is a challenge of continuing that, of course, due to COVID-19, but I'm optimistic that we will be able to go back. There are dependencies on these things. And this is where, you know, the students, you know, and the graduates need to come in. To be employable within the sector, you know, there are many factors that the prof have talked about in terms of attitude, and Mr. Mabena have talked about, and also an understanding that this sector, it's not the most, let me put it, how do I put it? We're not not the most glamorous sectors. You got to be able to fold, you know, your sleeves and be able to get into it. We're not the highest paid employees, you know, within this sector. Our jobs, you know, usually involve shifts. They involve getting, you know, very involved. If you're working in the kitchens, if you're a chef, if you're working in hotels, you know, it involves dedication that requires one to even work, you know, at night. And sometimes, you know, sleep at the hotel, you know, to go home in the morning or so. So it requires dedication. And also, because we're in times where, you know, situation is not so great, it will require innovation as well. So, you know, as a young, you know, student or someone who just graduated, how do you become innovative? How do you showcase what you can do? And how do you think outside of the norm? Because the normal, is already there. And, at this time, you're competing with a whole lot more people, that have lost their jobs and wanting to go back to the industry. So innovation, creativity, and coming up with new experiences that one could present to both domestic and international travelers, will be critical. We have areas that we have not explored in this country. Our food tourism, we haven't explored that, fully. We hardly talk about the food that we cook, the culture behind it, and how do we attract, people that are not from South Africa to love our food. If you watch TV and you watch how, the food, channels are thriving and how many chefs are displaying different cuisines, I think that that's an area that we can go in. Our culture is unexplored. We need a whole lot more of young people, that, they need to be able to, to sell our culture. Various provinces in this country are unexplored. If you look at our international itineraries, people arrive in Johannesburg, you go to Cape Town, you do a little bit of garden route if you can, you skip everywhere else, you go to Kruger National Park, you do the southern part of Kruger National Park if you can, and then back to Johannesburg, off you go back home. So what about Limpopo? What about Free State? What about Northwest? Although we do receive some tourists in that area, we need innovation. We need to be able to come up with new things that we can sell for local tourists and for international tourists. So there are opportunities, and I do believe that students, there's a big role to play, and please be involved and please be innovative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shikiwa, for that great advice. Now it is time for us to answer some of the questions actually that have been posted here. So panelists, please get ready for your questions. The first question is coming from Mohome Masoka, who is saying the variable student in the South African context needs serious problematization and unpacking. Is this the case with here? I think he's trying to look at the diversity amongst our students in South Africa, which may not be as homogeneous as those in Finland, because we have quite, in South Africa, we know how diverse we are. I think that's what he's trying to look at, probably if there are demographic differences in response during the research. And I'll put this to Professor Lube to please answer this question.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very good question that we had thought about quite intensively. The students that responded, 73% of these students were Black students, approximately 20% white students, and the rest were Indian or colored students. So the majority of students that did respond in South Africa were Black. However, that still leaves a lot of other issues of variability. We had the universities that we used where that we targeted, for example, were from Durban, where, as you know, you draw a lot of students from rural areas. Pretoria, where we had the majority of responses, were from TUT and from UP. And we're a traditional university similar to UJ, which is a comprehensive university. So it draws students from all areas. We did ask questions about where students came from. We did ask questions about age. Our questionnaire did not include reasons for certain things. We had to make certain interpretations based on our responses. What we did try to do was to analyze some significant differences between students. The interesting thing is, if we look at Finland, the students in Finland, there was a significantly higher percentage of students were older, in the 25 and older group, whereas our students were in the younger group, below 25. So there were some differences there, but I think that the one thing that struck me was, for example, where I mentioned in the beginning that our students are very value the contribution of their lecturers very much. and much more so than in Finland. Excuse me, Jarmo, it's not, we didn't ask why, I must add. So those were not the questions that, we just determined that was the answer. And if one just looks at it with younger students coming from rural areas, it's exactly as you say, or I think Jerry said that, if I'm not mistaken, is that students come into an environment that they're completely unaware of or have no knowledge of. So they are drinking in whatever they can to learn more. Whereas I think the more mature student, for example, in Finland, who's come out of a very sophisticated educational system, expects far more. Now, I must add, we didn't test this because there really wasn't a way to test this in this research project, but for ongoing, it would be something important. So we did try to determine if there were differences, but I think the main thing is that although we aren't a homogeneous type of student, the majority of the students were Black. So there were also no significant differences we tested between white students and Black students. The general answers were, we couldn't find any differences between the racial groups and so on. So we did do those kinds of tests, which obviously we can't respond to now, but we did take into account the variability of students, where they came from, etc., etc.
Thank you so much, Professor Lube. Because we're running out of time, I will want to request other panelists, don't answer a question more than 1 minute, because we have so many questions coming in. It shows that what we are presenting is very interesting. The second one, I'm going to direct to Jarmo. This one says, but before I want to also tell our participants that the main results, or say the whole results, can be disseminated. Actually, we found some differences between universities in South Africa, like University of Zululand, University of Pretoria, University of Johannesburg. There are some differences, but we'll try to disseminate those informations. Okay, let's take the second one. What has this industry learned from the COVID-19 pandemic? Are there opportunities for new learning? Jarmo, please, 1 minute.
Okay, I thought about this yesterday when I walked from home to the campus, and I think what industry has learned, or is still learning, because it's still going on, that there is a need for innovations or competencies related to innovations and also resilience. I think these are in a way 2 topics or 2 themes, or also competencies that will be needed today and also in the future.
Thank you so much for keeping to the time. Tracy, how would we encourage lecturers to be more in touch with what is happening in the industry so that their teaching remains relevant and we have better graduates?
I think one of the most positive outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of our industry is that industry has really sort of woken up and reached out to us and has acknowledged that students are going to be the key in terms of rebuilding the industry going forward. So there's been a real call for the university to collaborate with industry, not just in terms of providing students for work, but also in terms of providing lecturers with new learning opportunities. A part of the SUCSESS project that we're discussing today is training the trainer. So the project allows for workshops where lecturers will be, from all of our partner universities, will be trained in various aspects of the project, so that we do spread the impact of the project and engage all of our lecturers in developing competent students, and also in increasing collaboration with industry themselves.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm asking this to Jerry. How do we encourage more budding entrepreneurs, students who want to become entrepreneurs after their studies, through innovative teaching practices and with improved industry support? I know you are not a lecturer, but I know you've lectured before, or you know much of what you're talking about. How do you think we can help those oncoming entrepreneurs? Yeah.
I think, thanks, Prof. The key thing for me would be to look for what Chief alluded to when he said that there are certain unexplored areas. And he referred to the food area, and I can also refer to culture and heritage as new areas. So the key thing there is to encourage students to move into those spaces. Somebody in the chat also asked about entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship. I don't think it's either or. You need both. If you find yourself in an environment where you are employed, it's good for you to kind of find those opportunities in there. And if you don't, if you're in an outside environment, my suggestion there is that we use enterprise supply development, where we as industry partner with students and universities and institutions of higher learning to give access to markets for these students who've got these new ideas.
Okay, can we, School of Tourism and Hospitality, University of Johannesburg may also has something to say. Can somebody say something here from STH? If not, I'll leave you now in peace and move over. This is not really a question. This is kind of a warning to those of our colleagues here who are coming from the industry. Somebody seems to be angry with you. He said industry needs to open up the more for students to learn from the environment. You don't need to answer anything. This is just a straightforward, kind of a request from someone here. And then another person is saying, I think I will direct this to Yarmo. 3 years seems long time for your project. Yeah, this guy is saying that 3 years is so long for a project, especially if you look at the youth and graduate unemployment in South Africa. This person is asking, how can this be fast-tracked? Do you think we can fast-track this project to meet this person's needs?
Okay, this is a very, very difficult question, a challenging question, and why this is a 3 years project is that, you know, where normally these Erasmus Plus capacity building projects last for 3 years. So it's kind of time frame for us, and especially now when we have the pandemic a bit disturbing our work. So I don't know, I think we can't find a fast track at the moment, unfortunately, but we do our best in the project in a way to find good and solutions for all of us.
Thank you so much. And this question is coming from Nelly Swart, which I'm directing to Berendine. She said, recommendations suggest better alignment between curriculum and industry, given the CHE timelines related to the accreditation of programs in South Africa and the criteria not to change more than 50% of the curriculum once accredited. How do we foresee to implement this recommendation that you have put forward? Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Berendine. Unmute yourself.
Yes, okay. Am I muted now? Yes, I'm just reading the question because I did lose the sound a little bit there. The question was what recommendations for better alignment?
Because CHE requires us not to change more than 50% of the curriculum once accredited. If you change more than 50, it becomes a new program. And she is asking, how do we then implement your recommendation, the recommendations that we are making here?
Okay, can't I pass that question on to industry?
Yeah, okay. Well,
no. What I would like to say on that, Ike, is that I think this is where we talk a lot about collaboration between the students must be involved in collaboration programs with industry. But I think in this respect, there is a real need for the teaching staff, the lecturers, to build relationships with industry, to be constantly up to date with what is happening in industry and to know what the needs of industry are. So if you can only change 50% of your curriculum, you have to do this within certain periods of time. But if you look at some of the content, the basic teaching doesn't have to change. It's the updating, the consistent updating of the content. And this is where your projects that you do should be very timely to include in terms of your practical exposure, albeit with industry or only as projects within the curriculum. So I think there's a lot of maneuvering room within the curriculum, but I would say the most important is that lecturer relationship with industry.
Thank you so much. Well answered. This one is coming from someone anonymous. Teachers are also learners. Quite a novel approach. It needs a mindset change on behalf of the teachers. Yarmo, please just tell us something in 30 seconds about this.
Okay, it's very difficult because as you know, so with teachers still believe that we know everything, and as I said, we changed to this inquiry learning 10 years ago, and still in a way our colleagues have some challenges to settle to this learner role, but it's a slow process, but it's going on, and it's not that easy, to be honest.
Thank you so much. And there's another question that says, how can the industry help to improve the collaboration with universities and improve the curriculum? So that is relevant. I think Yamo has actually answered this in his first presentation. So let's keep this. And this person says, I am on Sheffield campus, UK, Sheffield University. Is it possible to have some granularity in terms of gap analysis? Are there gender differences? I think we've talked about this already, so we skip this. Wonderful insights on employability skills versus our educational training. Can we benchmark with Kenya as well? Yeah, this is from George Aria. I think he's from Kenya. He's saying, wonderful insights. Can we also benchmark with Kenya? I think I may ask Berendine to quickly say, can this be done or not? Unmute your microphone, please, Berendine.
Yeah, as you can see, I get all involved in the subject matter and forget about all the technology. Well, I think it can always be done. I think benchmarking can always be done. I think one has to, what is important is the context and the environment with which it's unique to each country. That's why much of what is done in Finland, we cannot just transfer. We need a different level of what we are doing here. But I would assume that between ourselves and Kenya, there's perhaps a bit more similarity because of being from Africa and with our challenges there. So yes, certainly do I agree that, one should be sharing. I'm a great believer in sharing knowledge, benchmarking, and improving in that way.
Thank you so much, Berendine. This one, can we answer quickly from Toyin Adetiba? He's just asking, how do you think South Africa can reorder the industry to reflect its commitment to building the industry? Can I ask Shifiwa to tell us something? He's saying, how can South Africa reorder, kind of change the industry or bring in some innovation to reflect the commitment to building the industry? I really don't understand this question so well, but can you share, do you understand anything here? And if yes, please, can you share your thoughts? I think it's talking about innovation in the industry to probably ensure commitment to training the students or something like that.
Well, thank you, Prof. I think one of the first things that we have to understand is that, the industry belongs to everyone. And it belongs to those that, come in, innovate, and bring in new thinking and new ways of doing tourism. So it's not a matter of whether the industry can be changed. It's what is it that we can do, as students to change the trajectory of the industry. There's been, for many years, we've been coming into this space and adapting ourselves into the space. It may be time now to say, how do we, create something new outside of this space? And I'll talk about the concept of Shisanyam. When Shisanyam was started, many people were saying, well, it's something else. But it took a life of its own, and it's now a business of its own. So it's a similar kind of a model where, we have to think outside of the box. And we have to think of the industry as something that we can create as students and something that we can come in and innovate and change the way it's going. That's why I spoke about different places that are unexplored, different, tourism that's not explored. We don't even have tours, for Northern Cape as scheduled tours. Limpopo, we don't have that. So we have to change it ourselves. The industry itself is business people, it's comprised of entrepreneurs. If they're making money in that segment of the market, they will continue in that segment of the market. It's time to create new segments of the market.
Thank you so much, Shifiwa. Now I'm going to read comments from Diane Abrahams, who is also trying to respond to the questions that were asked. Diane Abrahams said, content needs to be updated regularly, just as Berendine has already said, to ensure relevance rather than recurriculate. That is excellent. It's a very easy way, and I think it's more dynamic. And she also said, industry needs to be in the classroom as adjunct lecturers, and lecturers should, and she also spend time within, lecturers should also spend time with the industry. Thank you so much, Diane Abrahams. I also want to leave my classroom and go and work in the industry for 3 months, just like my colleague in Yaramo. That would be interesting because I'm tired of publishing papers. I'm tired of all this research. I think I need a kind of a fresh wind. Thank you so much for Diane for supporting us. And we also received a comment from Eva Holmberg, who is actually a project manager or project coordinator in terms of this project. She says, thanks a lot for an excellent webinar. Colleagues, I think we have to end here because we've just run out of time. Thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you so much for your insights. And thank you so much for your passion, for your dedication, for your
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, yeah, colleagues, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao. I just got disconnected here. Thank you so much.